Welcome to Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham. This is my good pal, Ty Franck. Today we're talking about Season 2, Episode 5, Home.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting episode to talk about because one of the things that probably most people who watch the show don't know is this is the episode Mark and Hawk used to sell the show.
Yeah.
This is it. Well, this was the sales document right here.
And we'll say that Mark Fergus and Hawk Oatsby wrote this episode, and it was directed by David Grossman. And Ty, tell that story about how they had Thomas Jane on the phone, and he used this to, or did we tell that when we had Thomas Jane on?
We did. When we had Tom on, we talked about the fact that this was how they sold him as well. But even before that, so Mark and Hawk had been attached to the project by a guy named Sean Daniel and his protege Jason Brown, who had a little producing company called the Sean Daniel Company. And Sean is Hollywood royalty. Sean, I think he ran one of the giant movie producing studios for years, and he produced Tombstone. He produced like a bunch of movies you watched in that period. Animal House. He produced Animal House, right? So he's been around forever and knows everybody. And he started his own little production company with Jason. They were the ones, along with Ben Cook, who optioned The Expanse, got us working on it, brought in Mark and Hawk to write a pilot for it. And that little group of 5 people, or 6 people, I guess, that little group of 6 people there became the people who initially sold the show. And so Mark and Hawk had written this pilot, and I guess it was before Alcon, right? It was before Alcon. We were going around to the studios to sell the project to the studios, and Mark was doing the pitch. And the end of the pitch every time was episode 205, where he talks about Miller finally getting to meet Julie and them being on this doomed asteroid together, and how his conversation with her on that asteroid saves the Earth. And that's how we fucking sold the show, man. In fact, in one meeting, I don't remember which studio we were meeting with, he had somebody in the boardroom in tears. Like one of the studio producers was like sobbing as he was telling this story.
Wow.
It was amazing. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, this is the episode that sold the show. And I think it's the episode that Mark was waiting to write for 2.5 years. So he'd been writing this episode in his head for 2.5 years before he wrote it.
Mark is a hell of a pitcher. If he could have the exec crying in the pitch room, if you can get them to not be on their phones while you're pitching, then you're doing something right. So good for you, Mark. That's fucking awesome. I had to say, I think, and I have to watch the rest of the episodes, but I think this might be my favorite episode of all of The Expanse. I watched it before we did this, and I have watched this one before. A lot I haven't seen, but I have watched this one before. And I just think in terms of how the rise in action, how it was structured, how it was written, how it climaxes, we spent 2 seasons of him seeking her out, and you have that moment of them meeting. I don't know what I believe about a love like that existing in the real world. I certainly think it's possible, but I definitely think it's possible in fiction, where they see each other and they were meant for each other to spend, in an embrace of eternity together. I'm a sucker for that, Ty. I'm a sucker for that. And I just think everything about this episode is really great. Now, there are some things that we could talk about, with hindsight, looking back, that we would want to do differently. I know that you've mentioned before that, having to do it again, there would be things that you would do differently. But before we get into the episode, this reminds me a lot of, and we were talking about earlier, but I guess it's the first episode of the new Battlestar, which I think has this rising tension. I think it's called 33, and it has this rising tension 33. where they appear, and then the Cylons are right behind them, and then they have to hold them off before they jump again, and they're trying to lose them in time. Do you remember that episode specifically?
Yeah, for sure. It's what it is the idea being that when you jump to light speed, that it's not possible for somebody to follow you, to know where you went. And so it's supposed to be a way to evade pursuit. And they keep jumping to light speed, and when they come out of it, there's a clock. 33 minutes later, the Cylons just appear right where they are and attack them. And so they're trying to figure out how they're being tracked. And so there's this ticking clock of 33 minutes constantly. You're always in danger. 33 minutes, Cylons are going to attack you. And while that's going on, you're trying to figure out, how are they tracking us? Is there some new way to track people through light speed? Is there a tracking device on the ship that's telling the Cylons where we're going? And so there's this, it's like a puzzle you have to solve while this constant pressure of this ticking clock is going in the background. And it's really, really well done. It's well written. Ron Moore.
How are they tracking them?
It's been a long time since I've seen it. I don't remember what the resolution is. I do know they figure it out though and are able to get away, but I don't remember exactly what the resolution is.
How are they navigating space and light speed and spaceships and nuclear power and all that without a certain level of technology? Because they don't go online, right? Like there's a limit to their technology. Is it possible for them to do all the things they do without that technology?
I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. Sci-fi typically asks you to accept one thing is true, right? And you just have to accept. You just have to go along with it, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't mind that. That's okay. I mean, I don't need everything to be hyper realistic. I don't need it to be like watching a show set in reality. And, Battlestar Galactica basically is like, we have a level of technology. We have hyperdrives or light speed drives or whatever. We have this stuff, but our older ships don't have networked computers on them. I'm fine going with that. I'm fine accepting that premise. That's okay. That's okay. And in fact, what's interesting about that is Battlestar Galactica, the early seasons, I was all on board. They started to lose me in the later seasons because in the later seasons, they started asking me to accept more things. And the mysticism came in and the sort of pseudo-religious stuff came in, and suddenly it was angels and gods and all this other stuff. That's asking me to accept too many things at that point. And that's when the show kind of lost me. But everybody has a different tolerance for that. My tolerance just hit a point where I stopped accepting it, but everybody has a different tolerance level. Some people can't accept anything. I mean, the fact that in our show, we don't explain how the Epstein drive works. Some people can't accept that. Like, well, that does that. It's not possible to have a fusion drive that's that efficient. Therefore, I won't watch the show. And that's fine. Right. That's where their tolerance level is. Everybody's got a different one. And some people, you could throw a million weird ass things in your show and they don't care. They're all along for the ride.
I'm that guy. I'm along for the ride, man. Like, let's go. Yeah. I'll believe it. But one of the things that I think works very well with you creating the world of the Expanse at the opening of this show, they're trying to wrap their head around the crazy shit that Eros is doing. And one of the things that I think the Expanse did well is you guys are so, it's very important to you to be as close to correct with the science and the physics and have a realistic projection of what our technology is going to be like and making sure everything kind of works out mathematically. So then when you have something that is outside of the realm, that is completely bizarre, like this asteroid taking on a life of its own and speeding up and Miller's not feeling the G-force and all the things that it's doing, it's way more impactful. It blows you away because nothing like this has taken place on the show yet. And so when everybody's trying to comprehend what the hell's going on and wrapping their head around it, it has such a bigger impact than if this happened on Star Trek or Star Wars or you would be like, oh, okay, this is but it wouldn't be like, holy shit, this is crazy.
Yeah. The problem with world building where anything is possible is once anything is possible, nothing is surprising. So you can never get and we've talked in the past about Star Trek, and I made my love for OG Star Trek really clear. The issue you get into with fiction like Star Trek is because it seems like anything is possible, nothing ever really surprises you. It's like these aliens look like Greek gods and can shoot lightning out of their fingers, and you go, oh, okay. It's not like, holy shit, where did this Greek god guy come from? It's just kind of like, well, okay, that's the latest weird thing that's happening, I guess. I'm not bashing Star Trek for that. I'm just saying your surprises have to come from something else. It can't come from that.
And it's almost like you have to earn it. You have to, if you really want to make those moments happen, So, a whole season and a half of The Expanse of being logical, methodical, everything making sense, and then all of a sudden there's this protomolecule on an asteroid, and it's doing things that defy the laws of physics, and it affects you. When Avasarala runs into the UNN command center, and she's like, "What the fuck is going on?" and everybody's frantic, trying to figure out what's going on, and you see the look in the Rosanate's face, all the crew in their face of trying to figure out how the hell that this is even possible. It really affects you. I heard, I hear Spielberg talk a lot about Jaws, and he says, it's really interesting because I went to the first screening of Jaws, and the biggest scream I got in the theater is when you see the head turn around, that big famous. And he said, I was so excited about that, about the screams and everything. I got greedy. I wanted to put more screams into the film. But what I learned is it starts to have diminishing returns, in that you have to structure your fear and your horror in a way that leads to a climax, and after that climax, it's going to come down. If you just try to get scream, or you'll exhaust the audience and it loses its impact. And so,
that's right.
I thought that was, and it's kind of similar to what you're talking about, in these fantasy worlds you live in. And it's like, oh, this is cool. Anything's possible. But because anything's possible, it's not as interesting or as exciting.
Yeah, I think one of the shows, based on books that did that the best, at least in the early seasons, was Game of Thrones. You start Game of Thrones, the first episode, you start out with the White Walkers killing those guys in the woods, and then we don't go back to them. Like, we just leave. So we know there's something weird going on in the woods, but that's really all we know, right? And then we spend 9 episodes making the world feel like the real world. It's so grounded. It's dirty. It's realistic. It feels like it could be taking place in England, right? Like in our world, because everything is so grounded in reality. And then the end of the 10th episode of the first season is Dany giving birth to the dragons in the fire. And that, because we have spent 9 episodes being so grounded in reality, when those dragons show up, it feels so dramatic. It feels like such a game changer, where you're like, what? Whoa, there's fucking dragons, right? Now, if like every episode, people had been casting spells, and there's magic swords, and there's like all that stuff, if that had been going on in every episode, the appearance of the dragons at the end of episode 10 would have just felt like another thing that was happening. Like, oh, I guess there's dragons too, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about there, is earning those moments of surprise, earning those moments of shock. Yeah.
Yeah. Game of Thrones is a good example, because when I think the very first scene of the very first episode of Game of Thrones is you get to see a White Walker, right? You see the guy with glowing eyes.
That's what I was saying. Yep.
Yeah, you see that. So as you go on and you don't address it or even go back to what that White Walker was, there's an element of mystery that kind of highlights everything else in the show, of like, wait a minute, what was that fucking thing? And what is this thing? And it kind of pulls you into it. And you're exactly right. You get lulled into this reality world, and then there's dragons there. And I love, it's kind of like at the beginning when Julie Mao sees the protomolecule around the nuclear reactor. That's right. And then it cuts to, now we're in space, and then they're doing normal shit. They're ice hauling, or a bunch of miners in space, like Joe Rogan said. But they're going and getting, icebergs and just day-to-day work and, working, so you start with this like crazy, supernatural, insane thing. And then you get back to like regular day-to-day life. And then the whole show, you're like, but what was that fucking thing? And then the mystery of Miller trying to figure out what happened to Julie Mao and that whole thing. It's a little bit, I don't know if carbonated is the right word, but it's a little bit energized by this other kind of horrific thing that you saw in the beginning. So Naomi comes up with the plan, because she, first of all, how does she come up with the plan that there seems to be a seed crystal or something at the center of the protomolecule that it's growing off of? And she says to Miller, maybe if you take the bomb and get to the the belly of Eros and blow up that seed crystal, maybe that's a way that can take care of the protomolecule.
The idea there is that Eros is radiating energy. It's heating up. That some sort of energetic thing is happening inside of Eros that is giving it the power to do the things that it's doing.
Uh-huh.
And we have that scene where, Naomi and Amos are talking about that, and she's saying the temperature went up by this, and Amos is like calculating how much energy it would take to raise the temperature by that. And
I don't like that you assumed that Amos couldn't do the math on which he couldn't. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, he does do the math. He's doing the math, right? He's doing the math in his head.
He's way slower than Naomi.
Yes. So, and then she's saying basically like, it looks like the center of that, whatever that thing is that's generating this power is in this location. And he's tracking that. He's trying to find the center of that. Sort of like if you were able to take like a radiation map of like an aircraft carrier, the hottest point on the aircraft carrier would be the reactor, right? Yeah. And so if you were looking for the source of power of reactor, that's where you would go. So that's what she's doing. She's seeing the most radiation, the most heat, whatever is coming from this point. That must be the reactor. And Miller's going there with his bomb.
So Aaron Wright, Avasarala, they're all in the situation room and they're trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Of course, Aaron Wright suggests that this thing is headed for Earth, and that we need to open up our nuclear arsenal and we need to blow it away before it gets to us. And the counter argument to that is that there's this weird bio weapon that we believe is on Eros, and if you blow it up, it's going to blow it all over the galaxy. My question to you is, at this point, what does Earth know about Eros? We know what Aaron Wright knows because of his relationship with Jules Pierre Mao, but other people in the room other than Avasarala or Aaron Wright.
Well, I mean, they've certainly seen some of the information coming off of Eros. We've talked about Eros is broadcasting this sort of audio or this radio information. We've had, some camera footage of the things that have happened there. I mean, they have some information. They know it's some sort of biological agent of some kind that has infected these people. I mean, they have some information, but they're operating off of really imperfect information at this point.
Yeah, so
a lot of fog of war going on here.
So when he says, a bioweapon or whatever this thing is, they just know there's a lot of weird, mysterious shit happening. They can't put their finger on it, but now there's an asteroid coming at them.
Yep.
And that's impossible to do. So they want to, I find too in The Expanse, there are these situations where there's some sort of a threat or some sort of thing that's happening. And you got one side of the room is like, let's fucking blow them out of the sky. And then you got another side of the room, it's like, calm the fuck down. Let's think about, what this is. Is this by design? Is that kind of what the, kind of getting into the psyche of what it is to run a superpower with threats? And
well, what we try to do is give, in any scene where something like that's happening, give a lot of different perspectives, not just one perspective. And I think in a situation like that, you would have a lot of different perspectives. You have the one guy who's going, maybe this is a new Martian experimental drive system that, they're testing there. Somebody else going, no, it's a Martian bioweapon. Because nobody knows the answer. Nobody's got the right answer. So everybody's just speculating. Yeah. And you get a lot of different speculation. And the trick to being in a high pressure situation like this in a leadership role, like Aaron Wright and Avasarala and Sorrento Gillis are, is that you have to make irrevocable decisions based on this imperfect, incomplete information. And that's the drama and terror of being in a powerful position in a situation like that.
Yeah, I know what side of the fence I'd be on.
Blow it
up? Come on. If there's an asteroid that is just all of a sudden moving and coming at Earth, and if that hits you, we're going to go with blowing up. I want to play a little game. So, you were talking about Mark earlier and pitching an idea, So I'm going to give you a few details, and I want to see a pitch that you can come up with a pitch that you can come up off the top of your head. Okay. So one of the things is Thomas Jane is taking a nuclear weapon to go to the seed, deep into Eros at the Blue Falcon to blow up this seed to destroy the protomolecule. Okay, so your details are you have Thomas Jane, you got a nuclear weapon, and he's got to get to the center of something and blow it up. Okay, I'm a studio executive, and you got to pitch off the top of your head right now.
I don't like this game, Wes. I feel very uncomfortable. Dude,
No,
do we have a safe word?
Just off the top of your head, I want to see what you're. I mean, because like it could be silly because off the top of your head, but I'm just saying like I give you the elements, you pitch the idea, and then we'll see how it goes. You have to do it. It's the rules.
I did not agree to these rules. I don't.
And if I don't like the idea, I can reject you and the idea in the moment.
Okay. So do I get to do the other half of the game where you have to do a impromptu monologue for the character of Thomas Jane with the nuclear bomb? And we're in a casting session, and I can tell you suck and not give you the job.
I think it's only fair. I think it's only fair to do that. Okay, so they shoot the missiles at Eros, right? They're going to take out Eros. Then Eros disappears. It just falls off the radar. The missiles can't find him. Fred Johnson jumps in and is like, hey guys, give me control of the nuclear weapons. We can get the Rossi to paint the Eros, and I'll blow it out of the sky. Everybody in the UN is going crazy that, we can't trust. Are you crazy giving Fred Johnson control of half of our nuclear arsenal? And Avasarala said, we got to trust him. And Holden comes on the airwaves. And Avasarala vouches for Holden. Holden vouches for Fred. Everybody's vouching for everybody. And he agrees to do it. And they get the UN to do it. My question is what I know Avasarala has done her research on Holden. And she knows who he is. She has a good sense of his character. What do the other people in the room know about Holden? And is this something where they just don't have a choice at this point?
Yeah, I mean, Ehrenreich tried to have him killed on Eros. I mean, so the things that they know about this guy, some of them get mentioned in the scenes that he's a disgraced naval officer. He was dishonorably discharged from the Navy. They know those things about him. So there's nothing in his on paper record that would imply he can be trusted with this kind of thing. To the military guys in the room, the Navy guys in the room, this guy's just a fuck up. Mm-hmm. They're like, yeah, we kicked him out of the Navy for being an idiot. Why are we going to suddenly trust him with this incredibly important thing? All the things that are unusual about Holden that make him fit for this are things that would not be in his record, that would not be in his files. That things that Avasarala knows, having talked to his family, things that he's demonstrated in the actions he's taken before this. It really is a big gamble. But I do want to, when we're past this point, I do want to talk about a technical thing with this that I think is important. But I'll let you.
We'll talk about it now.
Okay, so a lot of people ask, like, why do they need to do that? Why do they need to give somebody local control of these missiles? In sci-fi, we talked about before getting things realistic so that when things are unrealistic, it feels impactful. One of the things that we work very hard to keep realistic is that light speed is light speed. And communication can't travel faster than light. There's no hyperwave radio with instantaneous communication across the galaxy. That doesn't exist, which means that if you send a message to something out by like the asteroid belt, it takes 30, 40, 50 minutes to get there, which means that you lack local control. There's no local control of things. If you decide, hey, we need to abort those missiles, and you press the abort button, those missiles aren't going to get that abort code for 50 minutes. And in many cases, they'll already have done something you didn't want them to do. So what the argument here from Fred is basically saying is, I have a guy who's local to Eros. He's right next to it. He can guide the missiles in. We can transfer control of their systems, and we'll have local control of the missiles. We won't have light delay interfering with our ability to give commands to those missiles. That's the thing he's offering her. That's what they don't have there on Earth that he can give to her. And that's why they agree to do it. It really is just about light delay and communication.
Yeah, that's good, because that was going to be my next question to you, is why was it important for Fred Johnson to do that? So they agree to do it. Fred Johnson is now in control of the nuclear weapons. Holden is painting Eros so the missiles know where to go to blow Eros up. And as the missiles and as Holden are chasing Eros, Eros speeds up. And in order to keep up, they have to speed up to a point where the G-force has the potential to kill them. This chase kind of sparked a little inspiration. I started thinking about my favorite chase scenes in the greatest chase scenes in movies. Now one of the things, Ty, and I always like if I look at the messages on YouTube or if I look at everybody comes up with all these great movies that I forget, and I love that. I love, the interaction and kind of going back and forth. And I need to make a note. I need to make a note to Clint and Joseph to remember the people that I'm responding to because I'm always like, oh, I'm going to bring that up on the podcast, or somebody leaves this really funny comment. I'm like, oh, I want to bring that up, and I always forget about it. So maybe I should write them down. You think? But this is my chase list off the top of my head. So don't get mad at me, fans. But Bullet, I think. The chase scene in Blues Brothers. I love that chase scene. Mad Max 2 and also Fury Road is just basically one big chase.
It's one big chase. Yep.
French Connection and The Bourne Supremacy.
Classic.
Yeah. And what I love about the French Connection is it's on foot, it's in cars, it's people running upstairs and jumping on trains, and it's amazing. Do you agree with me?
Would you consider Midnight Run a chase movie?
Yeah, that's chase movie. I'm talking about chase scene.
Chase scenes.
Movie,
okay.
Chase scenes.
Yeah, chase scenes.
And so
okay.
the reason I brought up Fury Road is obviously it would be a chase movie, but I would put that into one chase scene because as soon as your butt hits the theater seat and you're just like mouth wide open and it's pedal to the fucking metal the whole time.
Yep.
And there's a certain kind of sense of humor in the Mad Max movies that I like, how people are just flying and just sacrificing themselves, and all these crazy characters that are just like, like they're just taking the worst risk. Like there's no risk assessment. Like, you know what? Maybe if I let maybe if I let that truck get stable and I'm on this and then I'll jump, as opposed to just as soon as you get in range, just jumping full blast, just running into bullets and shit.
That's a really good description. The risk assessment in the Mad Max universe is very poor.
It's very poor. You remember the guy on Beyond Thunderdome that has like the mask with the long hair that's like that comes up in a thing? That guy's just fucking bananas, man. The stuff that he does in that chase scene, and then how he's on the front of he's on the front of the train. And he's like, and then he run into the other thing. Did I miss any before I move on?
I liked Baby Driver. I think there's
The Matrix Reloaded, or is it? Yeah, that's got a cool one.
The one on the freeway?
Yeah. Pretty badass.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to mention one that probably very few people will remember. One of my favorite movies by one of my favorite Hollywood writers is a movie called Way of the Gun. It's Chris McQuarrie who wrote Usual Suspects. It was his directing shot. So he wrote a movie called Way of the Gun, and they let him direct it too. It didn't do particularly well, but I love that movie. I have enormous affection for that movie. And there's one of my favorite chase scenes ever is in that movie because it is a slow motion chase scene. There's a couple of bad guys with guns. Clint is thumbs upping me. He's a big Way of the Gun fan. What it is there's a couple of bad guys with guns who are also our main characters, being followed by a couple of personal bodyguards with guns. And what the bad guys do is they drive into these really narrow alleys and just kind of let the car roll really slow. And then like the bad guys come up behind it, or the security guards come up behind him and they're rolling really slow. And then the bad guys kind of dive out of their car and let it keep rolling. And then they just start shooting the other car. And so it becomes like this series of like driving really slow through alleys where everybody's waiting for somebody to jump out of a car and start shooting. And it's incredibly tense and it's super slow motion. It's fucking great. If you haven't seen Way of the Gun, Wes, you would love it. It is our kind of movie.
All right,
it's great dialogue.
I got to put that on the list.
It's a great movie.
I've never seen it, and so I have to put that on the list.
It's fantastic. Knowing that you and I like the same kind of things so much, you are going to love that movie.
Should I watch it? I'm still here in Toronto, and it's not like I got anything else to do other work, and then Toronto's completely locked down. So work and then watch movies. Okay, so everyone on Earth is evacuated the planet. but Avasarala stays on Earth like a G. And she has this great, and I want to call a special attention to the scene that she has with her first husband. She gets divorced, I think in season 2, and gets another one. She replaces him, and she makes the new husband have the same name as the old husband. So she.
Well, let me say something. Let me say something about that. Okay. I want to say something about that.
All right.
For the record, we did not want to recast Brian George. For the record, there was no desire to do that. We loved him. He's great. If we could have kept him as her husband for the entire run of the show, we would have loved that. He took a different job. When we thought we were canceled, he wound up getting an offer from a sitcom. And that's good work. You're doing like 21 episodes.
Right.
It's good money for those shows. Yeah. I absolutely understand why he took that job.
Right.
No hard feelings with Brian George. We love him. I would totally work with him again.
Yeah.
That was not because we didn't like him.
But the scene that she has with her first husband, and they're going back and forth, the time delay is such a great detail. It runs contrast to this incredibly powerful conversation they're having, where he's basically saying goodbye to the love of his life, and there's a chance that they won't see each other again, but they keep having this time delay issue. They have to get the timing right. And so it has that kind of that regular struggle of, keeping your signal and talking to somebody, but also the underneath of how powerful and important the scene was. It's such a great detail and really adds to the moment.
It's a lovely scene. It's two really solid performers really digging into the material and doing a great job with it. And those two were a joy to work with together. I really enjoyed working with the two of them whenever they were together.
So now Miller, as he's going to the sea crystal, he starts to hear Julie's voice and hears things that she's saying, and all these little bits and pieces from her life that he's hearing. And he starts to put together that he says the word that this thing is eating consciousness, and it's using this consciousness to recreate something. And since Julie was the first, and it's leading him to the Blue Falcon, that he thinks that Julie's the one that has some kind of control over it, and that Holden and Fred needs to back off with the missiles and the chasing it, because he thinks that the protomolecule is just protecting itself, and give him a chance to talk to Julie. I'm a big fan of Eastern philosophy. I do read a lot in that world, and I'm curious. I'm curious where did you get the idea, I guess, when you were writing the books, about this thing eating consciousness? And do you have any kind of, or are you open to any kind of philosophical understanding that the consciousness is something separate than the body? Or are you pure materialist?
I'm a pretty pure materialist. I would say my philosophy is naturalist and materialist. Having said that, though, I think there are ways to get enormous complexity out of the material world. And I think what we see with consciousness is incredible complexity arising out of the material interactions. Complexity that is sort of compounding complexity, where it becomes so complex it's hard to understand how you get it out of the material that you're working with. But I think it's still there, and I think with what we're doing with the protomolecule is it's not just, it's disassembling these bodies, and the protomolecule itself is a machine that its primary purpose is to disassemble things, figure out what they're useful for, make use of them to build the thing it's supposed to build, which, as we know in the later seasons, what it actually was trying to build. But it's designed, it's like, I said this to Daniel when we were working on the books, to the protomolecule, everything in the universe is a box of Legos. Mm-hmm. So it finds things. So if it finds something made out of Legos, the first thing it does is it takes all the Legos apart, and then it uses the Legos to build something else. But everything is Legos. So when it finds these bodies, these dead people, it disassembles them, and it's figuring out what they're useful for. It's figuring out what the parts that they had could be repurposed for. And one of the things that it gets by disassembling all these brains is the consciousness that was contained in that brain, because it's able to understand it at a very high level of complexity. Mm-hmm. And so it's basically rebuilding these consciousnesses in its network after having disassembled the people, because it doesn't know what those consciousnesses are going to be useful for yet, but it's just another box of Legos. It's like, maybe those will be useful later, so I'm going to hang on to those. But yeah, that's what it's doing, is it's turning all these people into Legos and using the Legos.
Right. To me, it's really interesting because the practical becomes so complex that it becomes spiritual. So, again, like if we went back in time with our technology we have now, that would be magic to them. They would see that and it would seem like magic, even though there's grounded principles around that magic. It would seem like magic to them. So actually having the consciousness separate from the body, or learning how to dissolve, like it's the question of identity. Like what really makes us who we are? Is it just a string of memories that we that we put a narrative on and that are consecutive with each other, and that's kind of how we define ourselves? And then when those things are disassembled or put together, like, is Julie Mao still Julie Mao because she still has this kind of physical form, but she's been taken apart and then putting back together and used for a specific purpose? And, so philosophically, it does have, for me, it does get to a spiritual place, but that spiritual place could be very practical and pragmatic within the scientific realm. It's just a realm that we haven't understood yet.
Yeah, and that's completely fair. I think that is a completely fair interpretation of it, because we don't understand it. And the other thing that is true in the Expanse world building that we talk about more in the books than we do on the show is that the protomolecules its creators designed it to take over very early life, very simple life, microorganisms. Because if the universe is teeming with life, which it very probably is, 99.99999% of that life is going to be microorganisms. Mm-hmm. So the protomolecule is really designed to hijack microorganisms. The thing that happened with Earth is because Phoebe got captured by Saturn, like a billion years ago, the life that was on Earth at the time was very, very simple. That's what the protomolecule was supposed to be taking over. Then when the protomolecule winds up taking over a bunch of humans, it's now dealing with very complex life with things like consciousness and self-awareness and all those things. The protomolecule is not familiar with that. It's not sure what to do with that. Mm-hmm. So taking people apart and recreating their consciousnesses is in some way an attempt to understand what those consciousnesses are. Mm-hmm. Because the protomolecule always wants to understand everything, because then it can use those things as tools to do its job. Mm-hmm. And so it is sort of taking these humans apart, trying to figure out what they are, trying to figure out why they work the way that they do, what this thing of consciousness is, and then trying to figure out if that's a tool that is useful to do its work later. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot going on there. And I think viewing that from a sort of mysterious, like you said, you used the word spiritual, but I think that's fair. It is really hard to understand. It is big questions. And those same questions that you're asking right now are the questions we are attacking. We've already done the after show for season 5. Mm-hmm. And we've talked a little bit about season 4, but in season 4, those are questions we're attacking with the Miller character. In season 4 is what is the nature of consciousness? What is Detective Miller? Mm-hmm. Those are important questions, and we do sort of want to challenge them.
Right. And the love that that Miller has for Julie Mao and what Julie Mao has for Miller is real within this, and that kind of has another level of connecting to consciousness in that way, because there's something about the bird. There's something about her appearing before him. There's something about, and there's all kinds of explanations, but the way it kind of run together is something a little bit above our threshold of just pure articulation of understanding of what that is. And the mystery of that love and that connection they have, it to me is more interesting. The mystery of it.
For me, I hesitate to call it love. I think Miller has an obsession with Julie that grows throughout the first 2 seasons of the show. That the climax of that obsession is that moment in the room with her. And we have talked about the fact that when Miller and Julie become joined in the protomolecule there in that moment in Eros, and then what happens to them at the end of this episode, which we can talk about later, but that becomes the starting point of what the protomolecule builds. Mm-hmm. And because the two of them are joined together at that starting point, they become joined in a way that is very sort of at the almost metaphysical level, right? That these two consciousnesses become entwined by the protomolecule rebuilding them. And we've talked about too, that because the protomolecule is able to operate in what appears to be a faster than light motion, that moment has ripples both backward and forward in time. Mm-hmm. And so I hesitate to call it love. I mean, I think that is one interpretation, but I would call it more a profound joining of two consciousnesses that has ripples across time is what it is for me.
And I hear that. I understand that. I think the concept of that, the concept of everything happening at once, all at the same time, makes a lot of sense to me. And so whenever when something powerful happens, it has an impact on the present, the future, and the past, because it's all one once you take the element out of it. But if you say, if it is an obsession, which maybe it is, because, how does that not make it love? Because if that is the case, then you would have to really know what love is. And that's really something that's kind of hard to identify, or even maybe what one person would call obsession, another person would call love, And so, it's just kind of, most of the love stories that we see, like the Romeo and Juliet, or, where they see each other, they're really more about obsession than they are about love. I could say that if I knew what love was, if I knew specifically what that is and what the difference is.
And that's fair, because love is a word that we use to mean a lot of different things.
Right.
And because it is, when one person says the word love, almost no one in the room that hears them say it is going to have the same reaction to it or the same thought about what they mean.
Right.
Because we all use it to mean different things. I mean, I'm at that age now where guys my age are doing idiotic things like leaving their wife of 20 years and running off with their secretary. Right. And when you talk to them, what you hear is, well, I just fell out of love with my wife and I fell in love with my secretary. And what they mean is, I lost the fiery romantic passion for my wife that I had when we were first dating. And now I'm feeling this infatuation with my sexy secretary. And that's what they mean when they say love.
Yeah. And the thing, and what I just want to make an insert before you move on there. Yeah. But what I take that to mean, that is all self-focused. It's all selfishness, because it's not that I fell in love with my wife. It's that I am in love with the way I feel when I'm with that person. If the way that person makes me feel, that's what I love. So it has nothing to do with that person. It has nothing to do with the poor wife. Yep. It just has to do everything about him and how I feel in that situation. Sorry, go ahead.
And I agree with that. And I think obsession, like Miller has for Julie, is very self-focused, because Julie's not part of that. Mm-hmm. They never had a conversation. Mm-hmm. They never had a moment to get to know each other where he really connected with her on a sort of intellectual level. Mm-hmm. All he has is this idealized version of her that he has built up by researching her and talking to people who knew her and all of that stuff. But that picture of her isn't her.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, watching an actor in movies and going, oh, I love that person. Well, you don't know them.
You're exactly right.
You know the version of them that they show in movies. But if you met them in person, they would be a very different thing. And I think that's the danger in calling what Miller feels for Julie love in the classic sense, because it is obsession. It is entirely inwardly focused. It's his idea of what she is. It's not her idea of what she is.
Yeah.
So it's not a mature kind of love. It is that sort of romantic obsession version of it. That I think that's the trick. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of had that realization. I remember when I watched Closer, and I was like, I am full on in love with Alice, Natalie Portman's character in Closer. I watched that movie, and I'm like, I would marry her tomorrow. Maybe not marry, but I would, definitely like, and then I thought about it and it's like, we're so easy manipulated chemically, so if you I think about like that intense crush that I had. I remember, Stacia Tyson in high school and that like, insane crush. And then you think about it, it's the same concept of like falling in love with a fictional character on television because you create this thing in your mind and it's this chemical, kind of make-believe in your head that you create. And it's, and it has this chemical feeling like a drug, this dopamine release. And you're falling in love with the way it makes you feel and the way that makes you. And a lot of times people will find themselves in relationship because of that chemical thrust. And then like any drug, once it wears off, they're like, who the fuck are you? Like, what am I doing in this relationship? Right? And so there's not much difference to me falling in love with Natalie Portman than me falling in love with somebody, that I was in high school with that I didn't know, So it's really interesting. And so a lot of times there's movies and songs about that chemical infatuation, that's not really rooted in that day-to-day love, and I think, one of the things and today our topic, because I think this is the great love story between, Miller and Julie Mao. So we're going to be talking about doomed love stories. But one of the things that I like about a great love story is if something happens. So when you get to the apex of the love story and then something happens after that where they can't be together, because then when you leave that story, you just remember that climax. You just remember that thing. I think that's why, like in fairy tales, they say, and they all lived happily ever after, because that's the boring, mundane part, that colors this moment of being kind of foolish. But if you end it right then it lives in eternity as like, Romeo and Juliet. If you told that story and they ended up, working everything out and everything was good at the end and they went away and spent the rest of their life, it wouldn't have had the impact. The love couldn't have been as strong unless they die at the end. Because the death contrasts this love that they had for each other. Well,
and death also gives you an ending to the story. Mm-hmm. I mean,
but a powerful ending, because if they died, or if they held hands and walked out and the lights dimmed, then it wouldn't have been as powerful. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, Mark Twain talked. No, go. It's okay. Mark Twain talked about how you can end a story about a person, and he said one of the things he said was that stories have to end either with a marriage or a death. Because basically what he's saying is you have to end a story where a person is going through a radical transformation of their existence, and that feels satisfying, right? Mm-hmm. If you and there are obviously stories that do other things, but like if you follow somebody who's in a powerful romantic sort of story where they're trying to get with somebody and there's all these obstacles they have to overcome, and then they finally get together and you have that moment now where now they can be together. If you end right there, it's satisfying. If you allow them to be together and then you show like the mundane day-to-day of being together with somebody, that's so unsatisfying. It's like, oh, they fought so hard to be together and now she's doing the dishes and he's working on the car and right. You know what I mean? And so to get the most powerful version of that story is they have fought so hard to be together and now they're together and then they die. Right? That's the Romeo and Juliet version.
Yes.
It's so powerful because it is the culmination of your struggles and you get the romantic release of finally they're together and that's the end of the story and there's no more story.
Yes.
That's a powerful ending.
And then you walk away on that chemical high of that moment, of that apex mountain of their relationship that you walk away with, having. Now, let me ask you a question. So if Detective Miller met Julie Mao on the docks before Julie Mao went on her proto-molecule adventure, would Detective Miller ever have a chance with Julie Mao? Or is it because she's facing down an eternity of being alone that she's like, all right, I might as well take you along with me?
I don't think that's the choice that's happening there. I don't think when he shows up, and we can talk a little bit about, I get the joke that you make, but I think it's leading to an important point. The joke answer to that is, of course, he wouldn't have a shot with her. Dawes even says she'd spit in your face, right? Yeah, she's way too hot for him. But the serious side of that is, and I think this is an important point to make, I don't think she is agreeing to be his romantic partner in that moment. I think that thing you're talking about where because the moment has already happened, sort of in the greater causality sort of version of this, they have already crashed together on Venus. They have already been joined by the protomolecule into this single consciousness that they become. This moment is predating that in a linear sense, but as we talk about, that moment had ripples forward and backward in time, and Julie already knows that they wind up together in some sense. So it's already happened. And so when she says, you belong with me, what she's saying is she's not saying, I accept you as my romantic partner. What she's saying is we're already together. It's already happened. We're already joined. That's what that moment is about. And I would like to talk about acting and directing choices when we get the moment, because I have some thoughts on acting and directing choices for that moment.
So we're at the ending where Miller joins. It's a beautiful scene. Again, there's some, maybe different choices I would have done, but I do think it's a beautiful scene. Miller completely sacrifices himself. He takes his helmet off. The protomolecule gets involved with that. They end up, embracing, which for eternity, this great love story. And he convinces her to go into Venus. It ends with everybody watching Eros going into Venus. So now you can talk about what you want to do different.
Well, no, I was just going to talk about things that happen in production that alter the intent of the text. I'm talking about this from strictly writer perspective. Mm-hmm. The intent of the text was never that Julie falls in love with Miller. That was never the intent of the text. Mm-hmm. The intent is always Miller's obsessed with her. His obsession allows him to have the sort of fortitude to get to her. Right? If he wasn't obsessed with her, he would never have gotten there. He would have never gotten that far. So his obsession powers him through horrible circumstances and incredible dangers to get to her side. And we've talked about the fact that from the protomolecule's perspective, all these things sort of get melded together at that moment where they're joined and the ripples forward and backwards in time happen. And Julie recognizes Miller as part of the thing that's about to happen. It's not that she has fallen in love with him. It's that, oh, you're here now. We are going to be the same thing in a few minutes. We're already the same thing. That's the intent. And the book definitely embraces that version of it. That Miller's kind of crazy and this is not a real, this is not a real mature love here. This is romantic obsession. Mm-hmm. Mark, when he wrote it, I think he did do that version of it, but I think in conversations with Thomas, because Mark and Thomas work together a lot, I think Thomas really liked the idea that Miller and Julie are in love, because Thomas is an old school guy and he likes those old school, like sort of noir movies where
I like it
Humphrey
too.
Bogart. Yeah. Humphrey Bogart falls in love with the dame who comes in with the hot case. Yeah. And, and she falls in love with him because he's a manly man and, that whole thing. He liked that. And I think he was having conversations with Florence, who plays Julie, about this version of the story. And they came to the director and they were like, hey, what if in this scene, because it was never written that he kisses her. They pitched this idea. Hey, what if in the moment when they're together and they finally agreed to go to Venus together, they share this kiss? She says, you belong with me. And then they kiss. The directors have a lot going on. They often don't have time to really monitor all this stuff. They're supposed to, but a lot of things can get lost between the text and what actually winds up on film. Mark, I think, who is the producer of the episode because he wrote the episode, kind of got sucked into that version of it. And we wind up with this version where they get together. Miller does his big speech. She says, you belong with me. And then they kiss. And I think that kiss ruins the moment. Oh. I think that kiss destroys the intent of the moment. And I've always hated it. I hated it when I saw it in dailies. I complained to Narain about it. I said, this is fucking it up. This kiss is fucking it up. It's destroying the intent of the moment. Narain was juggling 40,000 cats at that point.
How would you have ended it?
I think she says, you belong with me. They share that look and we cut out of the scene because the kiss doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Why is she kissing him?
I'll tell you why. And we're having a disagreement right now because
go ahead.
I think that
and Mark Fergus and Thomas Jane would disagree with me on this too. So like you're not alone. You're not alone in disagreeing with me.
I'm a fan of that scene, but I think so. What I got from that scene, especially illuminated through the conversation that we've had, is that Miller, yes, has an obsession, but that obsession also is romantic, right? He
sure,
is
absolutely.
what he thinks is in love with her. So Julie Mao is now connected to the greater collective consciousness of the protomolecule. The protomolecule understands Miller and Miller's psyche, right? And so it's time for them to join, and it's time for them to join eternity. Now, Julie Mao understands on a practical, metaphysical level, but in the illusion of presenting herself to him, she's doing it in a way that really plays into Miller's thing that he's thinking it through. And so for her to give that kiss is allowing that joining to happen through his romantic obsession and allowing that fantasy to play itself out to have a complete connection with them. And so,
okay, fair enough. If that's your version of it, I'm not going to try to argue you out of that.
What's more powerful than a kiss, like locked in embrace as it's going?
To my mind, it changed the intent of the scene from these two people wound up in this place on very different paths with very different intentions, but because of the circumstances that they've gone through and the things that have happened to them, they wind up together in this moment. And that is going to lead to an incredibly powerful thing happening. And both of them recognize that. That's the intent of the scene.
But when having the romantic component.
But it turns it sexual, and it's not. She's not going to sleep with him. They're not going to have sex with each other. And the kiss feels like a sexual kiss. And it changes the intent of the scene, and I've always hated it. And
what's wrong with a little bit of sex?
Why would she have sex with him?
It's not. I don't see it as about sex. What I see it is like this ultimate expression of this connection between two people. And when you have that connection, sex is just a metaphorical, expression of that. And so I don't.
It makes it feel like. It makes it feel like she is the reward Miller gets for his troubles. And I hate whenever women are treated as rewards.
All right. But I'm not. I don't see it as that. I see her as the powerful one in the moment of saying, there is a mechanical necessity that the protomolecule has to, that has a mission, has a plan. This has already happened. It's reverberated through. So this is something that's going to happen. I am going to create, just like Miller appears in Holden's head, because the protomolecule needs Holden to do certain things. It needs to communicate to him. So it creates the vision of Miller, because they know they have this pre-existing relationship, and that's a way to get to Holden. So why would it be different for him to show up, and it would understand this romantic obsession that he has with Julie Mao, and it's all about absorbing him into that consciousness. And when I saw that kiss, I don't think they're about to bang each other like right there in the moment. I feel like I see that as his romantic obsession coming to an end as he absorbs into the protomolecule.
And you are on the same side with Mark and Thomas on that one. Right. I couldn't argue them out of it either. I'm just stating my opinion for the record here.
It's not like Julie Mao's a damsel in distress that he's there to save and then he gets his reward. She's the powerful one in the scene that is basically so far advanced at him at this point that's like, okay, I will create this picture for you to do what is supposed to be done.
I do not have that reaction to the moment. I think the kiss sucks all the power out of it.
And I think it was effective. I think because you don't have any romance, Ty. You cold-blooded. You got that you got the heart of the Grinch before the Grinch got warmed by those Christmas carols. Yours is like when they X-ray Ty's heart.
I've been married to the same woman for 30 years. I feel like I can pretend to have a little romance fairly well.
Because she's your Julie Mao. She's your Julie Mao. All right, so we're doing love stories. Now, obviously, through this conversation, Ty and I don't know a lot about love stories. I don't have anything against love. I like love stories, but as I was sitting down to write them down, I realized I didn't have command of the genre like I do a lot of other genres. Even though I am a fan and I do like them, I love a good love story. And so I I was having trouble. I thought I'd sit down and just have them all the time. Because also I think love stories, like the greatest love story, like Romeo and Juliet, I think they have to have the thing that Ty and I were discussing earlier. I think there needs to be an ending that highlights the life they have together. So, you know, if I think of a great love story, I think of like John Carpenter's Starman at the end when they have this great love affair and this relationship, this connection, but he knows, but they can't be together. He can't survive on Earth and she can't leave Earth. So he leaves, but he leaves her with a child. So there's a part of him. So I don't know what genre that is. What is that? Doomed romance or just romance without happy endings? Because, you know, depressingly enough, we can't use Lady Hawk because Lady Hawk, they end up together at the end. And it kind of takes away from it because I think Lady Hawk would have been so much better if they killed the bad guy and everything was done, but they had to continue with the relationship of him being a wolf and her being a hawk. So
I think Starman is the genre of deadbeat dad. You just knock some chick up and then you bail. You're like, sorry, honey, gotta go back to my home planet. See ya.
Yeah, they did
Have
put
fun raising that kid.
They did put a romantic spin on just an alien getting a fun ride while he's on Earth and then bailing and not dealing with the responsibility. Yeah. But you know what? He gave the kid marbles. You know, like those magic marbles that can do magic things. I would take that magic marble. Well, I'm not going to say that, but you know, I would be content if I was like, I don't have a dad, but I got these fucking magic marbles where I can do all kinds of crazy shit with them. I wonder if they're like Clark Kent's crystals, you know, where what if Jeff Bridges appears to him with the marble and tells him how to be a man?
Did you watch the terrible TV show they made?
They made a
Starman TV show?
No, and I'm offended.
Yeah, you never watched it?
I never even heard of it.
Nobody watched it. Yeah, it was that exact premise. It was the kid as a teenager, and he's got the magic marble, and his dad returns and says, like, hey, son, I'm here to teach you to be alien man.
What network was that on? I don't know.
I don't remember.
Everybody involved with that should be fired. That was a perfect ending, and it should not have continued. So do you want me to read to you my pool and then see if you can add anything to it?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Romeo and Juliet, I'm not sure which version, probably the one with DiCaprio. Say Anything. Wait a second. What happens at the end of Say? Yeah, they don't end up together, right? Say Anything?
No, they do end up together, and it ends with a beautiful ending shot of they're sitting on an airplane, and through the whole movie she's been terrified to fly. They got this scholarship to England, but she's terrified to go. They're sitting on the airplane together, holding hands. He's saying, if there's a problem with the plane, it always happens. Statistically, it always happens before the fasten seatbelt light goes off. So we're just waiting for that. And they're holding hands, and she's white knuckling, and they're staring at the sign. And then the ding, the seatbelt light goes off, and it cuts to credits. It's a beautiful ending. It's a perfect ending for that movie.
Does it qualify?
It does, because it ends where the two of them have shed their pasts together, and they are launching their life together from that moment. And it's beautiful. Good. It's perfect.
Yeah, I was thinking about that movie the other day. I love that movie. I think it's so great. But like the dad being a criminal and all that shit is like, wow. The Remains of the Day. I don't think this one qualifies, but Urban Cowboy. Dude, my dad. I remember my dad took me to the drive-in. Like, you know, I didn't even know what year that was. It was like one of the first memories I've had of like a movie. And I remember being in the drive-in, sitting in the back of a truck and seeing like John Travolta hanging off that tower, you know, when he fell and he's hanging off by his feet or whatever. And I just remember that. So it's always had it's such a movie, but it's always had a special, you know, place in me. I would say Officer and Gentleman, but that doesn't qualify because they have that moment where he goes and picks her up out of the thing and walks out. So that's like your kind of traditional. The very new version of A Star Is Born. I enjoyed that. You know, I know it's like mixed. Starman, Lady Hawk, Titanic, Brokeback Mountain, Atonement, The Notebook, Titanic,
You mentioned Titanic twice.
Oh,
you must really like Titanic.
No, I was just racking my brain, and I was like, it seems like I know more love stories in this, but the Titanic's like fits the perfect description because Leo goes bye-bye at the end. He just falls into the water. Forrest Gump, I consider Forrest Gump a love story, and her dying at the end. Boys Don't Cry, that's a doomed love story. And and I'm curious what you think about this one, but did you ever see that movie My Girl with little Home Alone guy in it? Yeah. Because it's essentially a love story and a friendship of those two, and the poor little guy gets bitten by bees and he dies at the end. I know I'm missing a lot, guys. So help us out, with our message boards and
love stories are a overrepresented percentage of movies.
I forgot about Casablanca.
Oh, Casablanca's a great one. Yeah.
Casablanca's on the top 5. Starman's for sure on the top 5. Casablanca for sure on the top 5.
See, Starman wouldn't make my top 5.
What?
Sorry.
Why?
Yeah, it wouldn't make my top 5. I mean, it's just okay. I don't love Starman.
Oh, hi. This is a big disagreement between us.
This is our episode where we disagree on everything.
I mean, this is John Carpenter.
What's interesting about this is really thematically appropriate because we're having this thing about romance, and one of the big middle point of every romance is where the two of them have like the falling out, and it doesn't look like they're going to wind up together. This is our falling out, man. This is the middle point of our romance.
Yeah, so we're at the beginning of the third act, and then we gotta pull it around towards the end.
We got to bring it back around.
We got to bring it back around. I like Starman. It's John Carpenter flexing his love story.
I know it's John Carpenter
flexing his love story muscles, and oh man, I love Starman.
I'm really surprised you didn't mention Quigley Down Under. With your boy Tom Selleck.
I love me some Quigley. Is that a love story? Yeah, I guess it is, huh?
Yeah. Crazy Cora. It's him and Crazy Cora, man.
Yeah.
There's nothing more romantic you can do than shoot a bunch of people with a high-powered sniper rifle.
Or High Road to China.
Doomed love stories, you got to go Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Leia and Han, where he winds up in the carbonite.
Yeah. Okay, we'll put that one on the list. All right. So I got Casablanca, Starman. You brought up a great idea, Empire Strikes Back, because of Han and Leia. Because it's doomed. It's a doomed one.
It's doomed. Yep.
Oh, what about the Notebook?
I find that director's movies incredibly maudlin.
Okay.
Every time I watch one of his movies, I feel like I need to throw up.
Should we put Titanic on there just because it's James Cameron? I'm sure the people.
I mean, it's
a doomed romance.
Highest grossing doomed romance story of all time.
All right, and then I bet people are screaming right now, like, you're forgetting about this movie. You forgot about that movie.
We forgot about 10,000 movies because there's 100 million doomed romance movies.
Stories. Yeah, I refuse. And if anybody wants to say English Patient, I refuse to put that movie on here.
I'm with Elaine Bennis on that one. I hate that movie.
What about Atonement?
My feelings on romantic movies are not as well formed or enthusiastic as they are on other genres. So I'm just gonna let you pick.
Okay.
I do, but I do have to tell my love story real quick.
Okay.
So I don't think anyone would argue that Love Story is a great love story. It's pretty maudlin. It's pretty, it's like they fall in love and she dies and it's so sad and I like all that. But the thing that is true about that movie is Ally McGraw was amazingly beautiful, right? Just like crazy, stunningly beautiful. I remember being a kid and seeing that movie. I think my mom watched it or something, and watching that movie and hating every moment of that movie, except going, that is what when I grow up, I want to find a woman that looks like that, right? Because she is activating the hormones in my prepubescent body. Many years later, I'm at Narain Shankar's house. His wife Cherie is doing a little event there because she does a lot of animal rights work, and so she's having an animal rights event there. And Narain and I are out in the backyard by the pool working on writing stuff, and everybody else is in the house. And people start drifting out. and saying hi to Narain and stuff. And one of those people that drifts out to say hi to Narain is this obviously older now woman who is still stunningly beautiful. And Narain says, "Oh, hey, this is my partner Ty. We work on the show, The Expanse, together. We're doing a little work here." And she turns to me and she sticks out her hand. She goes, "Hi, I'm Ally McGraw." And the only thing I could think to say was, "Oh, I know." It was like the dumbest moment of my life. I was like, oh, I know. Because like my brain was going, it was shooting back to when I was 11 and I was madly in love with her. It was not my finest moment. Yeah. So that was I just told you my doomed romance story. Ally McGraw and I did not wind up getting married. I embarrassed myself. It was pathetic.
Okay.
Doomed romance right there.
So your doomed romance would be our number 5 on the list. I will say that I will say the line in Love Story where being in love means you never have to say you're sorry. I can never understand that. I don't get what that is. But okay, guys, thanks for hanging out with us. That was season 2, episode 5, Home, one of my favorite episodes of the series. Please let us know what you think. Please let us know all the movies that we missed. We did a horrible job this time, and we let you down. We let all 7 of you down, and we apologize. And you let us know, and we'll make amends. We'll do it right. We'll come back with a list and have your additions to it.
I'm gonna pretend like I care.
All right, say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.